Hi, I'm Ophi YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I have hair in my mouth, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things. Today's video actually was requested by a few of you here in the Nuance Corner today, which I greatly appreciate, even though it does mean that I had to do something I had been resisting for a few years now, which is learn more about Melanie Martinez. So just like petty right off the bat, I never liked Melanie Martinez. Not for like a real reason. I've just always felt vaguely unsettled by her like sexy crybaby persona. I get that it's like a character. It's like crybaby and it's a whole thing and she's like trying to do something. That's why she's dressed like that. But I thought it was always a gross vibe back when that was her thing, when she was one of a few people who I thought of as like Tumblr artists. She was just not one of the ones that I would go to and listen to. Long story short, I had a gross vibe. I never particularly liked her, and then in 2017, allegations came out from somebody named Timothy Heller, who was a former friend of Melanie Martinez, and it painted Melanie in a light that made my gross out vibe from her seem pretty justified, and that made me never rethink my position of not being particularly interested in getting into her. In those years between Timothy Heller's allegations coming out in 2017 and very recently, I pretty much didn't hear much at all about Melanie Martinez. That may have also been your experience, or I may have just been blessedly out of the loop for a few years until she popped back up doing that weird alien gimmick. Anyway, though, in this video we are going to talk about Melanie Martinez, the allegations against her, the harassment campaign against her victim who has spoken out, and, general content warnings for everything associated with that. Trigger warning that we will be talking about coercion, sexual assault, my typical victim justice politics here on this channel. I also don't subscribe to that whole algorithm game of saying cutesy words or speaking around things, and I don't know whether or not that means that I'm not getting pushed in the algorithm. I mean, it seems like I do pretty well. There's almost 4,000 of us here. Hi. But if you appreciate that I don't subscribe to that game, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider maybe subscribing to me for more conversations like this in the future. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. Melanie Martinez is what I would describe as like a very Tumblr core musician. I think I might have already described her that way. A little edgy, but never in a way that really played to anything I was interested in. And always, like, exploiting a very acceptable sort of sexualized femininity was my take on all of this. Again, none of it ever really worked for me. Halsey's first album did, but nothing else in this vein ever really landed with me. I just wasn't that kind of teenage girl. No, I don't hold it against people who did. Like I said, I do understand the crybaby thing is supposed to be a character and something deeper than just, like, the thing I hate about it, which is just I don't like how it looks and how it plays. But, it wasn't for me. Melanie Martinez has achieved some level of mainstream success, though not the kind that translates into, like, big award nominations or wins. First VMA nomination that I saw listed on her wiki was from 2023, which was when she was coming back with new visuals for this current era. She has, however, certainly achieved more success than her former friend and accuser, Timothy Heller. Timothy Heller, and whether or not people believe her and her allegations, has been a very big topic of conversation online. There are multi-hour long videos dedicated to why people do not believe her or why people do believe her. Contentious Reddit and Twitter threads, attempts to debunk her story, attempts to debunk the fans of Melanie who are attempting to debunk Timothy's story. Fans of hers were very, very invested and arguably pretty well rewarded parasocially for jumping to her defense. We're going to get more into that later. But a lot of them still will, anytime that Timothy comes back up, anytime that people mentioned Timothy during the time when she was offline, people are still spreading their version of events that they think makes Timothy look like enough of a liar, that they think Melanie looks blameless. Let's start with Timothy's allegations. These came from a Twitter thread in 2017. When I wrote this story about my assault, I initially wasn't going to make the abuser. But I think it's important for you all to know this is about Melanie Martinez. The thought of writing this and having the world see it terrifies me,
especially because of who this person is. This was my best friend. She took me in, which I was so grateful for. I felt like I owed her my life, and my life began to revolve around hers.
In the beginning of her initial statement, Timothy gave more detail that seems to point towards Melanie being like kind of a shitty friend, not matching the emotional energy that Timothy was putting into the relationship, not being as interested in helping Timothy with her mental health struggles as Timothy was with helping Melanie, putting Timothy in a position where she had to apologize for having a panic attack, among other things. I'm not reading it for like time's sake, and just it doesn't really feel particularly valuable here, but it does feel worth telling you that this is something people bring up later because the narrative becomes, oh, this is a scorned friend kind of thing. That's not really what I buy about this. I linked to a Twitter thread in the description where you can read this entire initial statement as well as some other ones that are peppered throughout this video. I'm only reading part of it here, but after that portion, she continues.
The power she had over me grew into me having a very hard time saying no to her. I would do almost anything for her. One night during a sleepover, she became increasingly interested in my sexual preferences. She began asking me while in bed if I would have sex with her. While being incredibly uncomfortable with the offer, I attempted to laugh it off. I had a boyfriend at the time, and she knew that. It went on for hours, asking me why I didn't want to, that it would be fun. I repeatedly said no. I had work in the morning, I just wanted to sleep, I was exhausted. I attempted to sleep, but was kept up the entire night by my friend begging me to sleep with her. It seemed strange, but she was my best friend. I said no, and I thought we could move on. The next night, unfortunately, went the exact same way. Regardless of my response the first night, she was not giving up. If she had gotten the hint, she didn't care. I was exhausted. She convinced me to smoke weed, and since I have a hard time saying no to her, I complied, thinking maybe then I'd be able to just fall asleep and avoid the situation altogether. The same conversation began to happen. I said every form of no I could think of. Just so there is no confusion, I was molested by my best friend. I lay still, in shock, completely not reciprocating.
She also clarifies here that their friendship did continue after this initial event. I say it that way because it later gets used as a gotcha against her, like, oh, how did they remain friends after this? But, like, I just do not think that that is compelling. I think it takes a lot of time for people to realize sometimes when their consent has been broken in a way that actually ended up being impactful to them. I don't think that it's strange that they would have continued to be friends after this incident, but before Timothy spoke out about it. I don't personally find it to be discrediting, and it's also backed up in Timothy's own statement. Lots of people stay in relationships, romantic, sexual, physical, friendship, whatever it may be, with their assaulter after an assault. It doesn't really mean anything. Timothy's story has always come across to me as like somebody who is deeply hurt by something and trying to come to terms with it, and as somebody who like is still sorting through and making sense of something that happened a few years back. That's pretty upfront in the initial statement, which continues and concludes,
"We never talked about this night ever again. While it completely messed with my head, there was no way I could have been raped by my best friend, right? Our friendship ended because she decided she didn't have time for me anymore, to worry about me anymore. She cared about me too much, it was holding her back. I'm not sure how to end this story. I'm terrified of the response I'm going to get. The only reason I do this now is because I'm hoping because of recent events people will believe me. If you begin to doubt the abuse taking place in this story, I beg you to imagine her role in this being a man. Girls can rape girls. Best friends can rape best friends. Friendship does not equal consent. Silence doesn't equal consent. I wish it wasn't so hard for me to convince myself of these things."
Melanie, for her part, responded twice. There was an initial response right off the bat when Timothy was making these statements, and that one said,
"I am horrified and saddened by the statements and story told tonight by Timothy Heller. What she and I shared was a close friendship for a period of time. We came into each other's lives as we were both starting our career as artists, and we tried to help each other. We both had pain in dealing with our individual demons and the new paths we were forging, but I truly felt we were trying to lift each other up. She never said no to what we chose to do together. And though we parted ways, I am sending her love and light always.
And then Melanie would respond again after Timothy had been speaking to the press. So in this interview, Timothy gave additional details and context about her relationship with Melanie, and when she was pushed for more information about the assault, she gave a specific date, something that she hadn't done in her original statement on Twitter. Timothy explains why she got this date wrong later. I'll just play a clip from her recent video here. We're going to talk more about this video in a bit. All you really need to know is that it's from just a couple of weeks ago, this year, 2024, when Timothy resurfaced in late July to speak about this again on TikTok.
After my initial statement describing in detail what happened, my abuser issued a statement in response. She used the sentence, "She never said no to what we chose to do together." While I did say no, in many different ways, this sentence was actually quite validating for me to hear. She clearly didn't understand how consent works, and she admitted that something took place between us. I wish it ended there. I made the mistake of doing an interview with Daily Mail. While being interviewed, they asked for more specific details, like when the incident took place. It'd been around 2 years prior, so I didn't remember the exact date. What I did remember was a picture I took the next day. I went back in my camera roll, found the picture, and told them the day of the incident was the day before. Unfortunately, I was wrong. The picture in my camera roll appeared multiple times. I can't explain why. When the interview came out, her fans went back in her posts to that date to find that we were in different states.
The internet being the way it is, and fans being the way that they are, defenders of Melanie Martinez were really eager for there to be holes in Timothy's story and for them to have the option to poke those apart. So when they were presented with one, they took it. Though I personally don't find being wrong about a specific date to be discrediting enough for me not to believe somebody's allegations. I could not give specific dates on many of the worst things that I know for sure happened to me, and I know that that's the case for a lot of other people. And while I probably would be like, okay, I don't know the exact date, I can for sure understand how somebody looking at their camera roll and thinking to themselves that that's pretty much hard evidence could just get confused, say the wrong thing. I don't think that that necessarily needs to be held against them. The thing is, Melanie does, because Melanie thanked her fans for exploiting that inconsistency, encouraged this defense of her, responding a second time and changing her tune from that previous, "She never said no to what we chose to do together," to instead saying, "Yes, the fans are right, and the timelines actually don't add up, and thank you for investigating." I'm not kidding. Here's what she said.
I understand how hard it could be to see my side of the story, considering no one with a heart would want to invalidate anyone speaking up about this topic. I want to thank my fans who took the time to research the timeline, analyze past Instagram photos, and question the story being told, which reveal her false statements. I trusted so many people in my life who took advantage of that trust for their own personal gain. Please know that my intentions with everything that I do in my life are always pure, and I would never be intimate with someone without their absolute consent.
This one is an even less assuring statement than the first one was. She never said no is not a yes. And having heard Timothy's story about having been coerced and begged and worn down, it's concerning that there's no story of a yes even in Melanie's second defense of herself, right? It's clear she's attempting to salvage her reputation, and I mean, it seems like this may have worked, but to me, it does not add up. I don't like it.
If you've never heard my story before, you might at this point wonder, why would that matter? She admitted something between you took place in her statement. I agree, and this is just one of the parts that drives me crazy. After this discovery, she released a second statement, in which she thanks her fans for researching the timeline and analyzing past Instagram posts which reveal my false statements. Unfortunately, this was enough for 99% of her fans to take what she said as truth and deem me a liar. The complete contradiction of her statements meant nothing. The events after this are so much and so overwhelming, it's hard for me to recount. She ended up releasing essentially a diss track about me, with lyrics perpetuating the idea that I lied about all of this for fame.
Melanie then released this super cringe song called Piggyback, which is somehow worse than any of the other songs I've had the misfortune of hearing from her. And she talks about how she, trusted people too much when she was young, and how people are trying to kill her name for some fame, and so she's so done playing Piggyback. This was at least not, like, released through her normal record. It was, like, through Bandcamp, so I think she didn't profit off of it. That's one way that I've seen people trying to defend her for this, but it's just weird and kind of, like, immature and childish. And again, just, I did not like the song. I don't like any song I've ever heard by Melanie Martinez. In her video from this July, Timothy said that this song was essentially a diss track about her, and yeah, I don't disagree with that characterization. In this TikTok video, Timothy also talks about the cyberstalking and harassment and bullying that she received as a result of coming out against Melanie. It ultimately resulted in her being chased off of the internet for a few years, and this, of course, happens to victims who come forward constantly, and even without their abusers explicitly thanking and encouraging them to be little Sherlock Holmeses about it. It also strikes me as really sad that Timothy did seem to know ahead of time that this is how things would go for her, and that it probably would backfire and lead to a lot of stress for her, and it very clearly has. When she refers in her original statement to recent events making her think that she would be more readily believed, I think that that's because 2017 was the year that Me Too gained widestream notoriety. And there was, for a brief period there, a time where it felt like victims were finally going to be listened to and respected and heard. And that's really not something that ended up being borne out, even to high-profile victims who came forward during Me Too, who seemed for a moment as if they were going to be believed. They were not ultimately protected or safeguarded from the consequences of coming out against violent men or people in power over them. And while nobody is good at acknowledging or talking about sexual assault in general, they are particularly bad about acknowledging or speaking about it when it comes from a woman. Sexual assault, of course, like all abuse, is not necessarily gender-locked. Acknowledging that certain things like sexual violence tend to happen in certain contexts and are colored by the patriarchy does not mean that we don't still continue to care about sexual assault when it happens in between two women. Coercing somebody into having sex that they neither want or enjoy is sexual violence. It is not consent. A lack of no is not a yes, and though Melanie's "the things we chose to do together" may be trying to imply a yes, I really don't think it does. And especially when we pair that with the way that Melanie is characterized by another former friend of hers who has spoken about having a similar experience, being worn down until she consented to have sex that she had refused for several weeks, it implies that Melanie kept pushing until she stopped getting no's, and not that Melanie was, like, getting excited, enthusiastic yeses. This comes from a former friend of Melanie's named Maddie, who, when asked about the situation, said,
Also, something similar, not rape, happened with me and Mel. She begged me over and over again to sleep with her, and I finally gave in. She wore me down. I said yes, but it was not the same with Timothy. I will support Timothy Heller till the end.
And then later retweeted to clarify, saying,
FYI, everyone, I think a lot of people misinterpreted this. It was manipulative of her, but what happened between her and I was consenting. I wanted to share this, seeing how a lot of people are calling Timothy a liar. She's not. We were both great friends with Mel.
Let me also say, I'm not really in the interest of telling people how to feel about their own experiences, and I know that everything hits people in different ways and gets processed in ways that may feel less traumatizing for some than for others. But consent that you gave after somebody wore you down and you got tired of saying no and not having your no respected is not you giving full and free and enthusiastic consent. You don't have to internalize something like this as assault if you don't wish to, but the person who did that should have been looking to you for an excited, eager consent and not for not saying no. In other words, if one person is saying this and this and this and this, and I'm going to do this and this, and the other person is not saying no, that's a very different conversation than if one person is saying, I'm going to do this and this and this, and the other person is saying, oh God, please, yes, and also can you do this and not do this and do this other thing, right? Only one of those is really choosing to do things together. Melanie's first response was bad. It didn't make her look any better, and it especially didn't when most people who quoted it left out the "to what we chose to do together" and only left it at "she never said no," which honestly kind of on Melanie for phrasing it that way, I think. And then also on top of that with Maddie's corroborating story, it just does not look good to me. I wish I could say that I don't understand what there is to be gained from harassing Timothy, or anybody who comes forward against a musician or an artist that you like, but I do kind of think that I understand where that comes from. I think it stems from a desire to make sure that the things and the people that you like are inherently and unquestionably good, so that it therefore can never reflect poorly on you that you liked something or somebody who wasn't. I think it stems from a desire to wish that only people who share our morals and behave in the ways that we wish that they would could make something that we would enjoy. And I think in pretty much all cases, and especially in cases like this, where it's like a small indie artist who's pretty accessible and who then thanks you for defending them and trying to debunk their accuser, I think it's a hefty dose of parasociality. I don't understand why somebody wouldn't just bite their tongue and refuse to comment on this if they truly were that invested in finding a way to continue to enjoy Melanie Martinez, but I also do understand why this situation makes people feel argumentative and combative, because it is very much one person's word against another's. I read entire Twitter threads that wanted to debunk this situation, that wanted to paint Timothy as like an evil, compulsive liar, and it's very clear to me that those all accepted that characterization of Timothy because it was the only one that allows them to maintain their own internal characterization of Melanie. I'd like to say regarding the allegations that Timothy made and that Maddie made, I believe them, and also that I can feel so much of her clear and real hurt, not only over what she's alleging, but also over the end of what seems to have been a pretty codependent friendship and relationship that the two of them had. I don't think it makes it some grand conspiracy that once you've been hurt, you sometimes will think about something in a different context than you might have initially processed it. And if I can feel how hurt she is by the end of that relationship between the two of them, I also absolutely can see that that is what people are seizing on and twisting and trying to use to make it look like Timothy is like some manipulative mastermind who is specifically trying to sink Melanie Martinez's career. I don't necessarily know that I can say for sure Timothy does not want to see Melanie's career suffer, but I also don't think that I hold that against somebody for feeling that way when somebody who did this kind of thing to them is famous and gaining notoriety, right? We do not treat people well enough when they come forward with their stories to pressure them into sharing the way that we do as a society, but we do anyway. We act like we need to know. We turn the processing of grief and trauma into a spectator sport, and then as we do, we insist on details that we don't really have any reason or right to know. What does it actually matter if Timothy got the date wrong? If Melanie agrees that it happens enough that her response wasn't actually, no, we never had sleepovers, I don't know what she's talking about, where it seems like consent would have been blurry, and that she didn't even realize that the dates were wrong until her fans started sleuthing, I'm inclined to believe Timothy's version of events, if not the specific dates. I don't need to know the exact dates. I don't know the exact dates of my trauma, and while it is a little bit different if you're going to the press about it, I also don't hold it against somebody who was unprepared for an interview after they put something out on Twitter, not knowing how it was going to change/ruin their life for the next several years. Timothy's allegations do not seem to have hurt Melanie Martinez's career, and I think at this point I would be pretty surprised to see Melanie respond again. I could be wrong, but I imagine that this is the kind of thing where the dust settled relatively quickly for Melanie and will continue to swirl for several more years in Timothy's life, and that really sucks. I think she should be able to just, be on social media like anybody else. And based on what she said in her TikTok video, it seems like she has previously attempted to move on from this, and it was other people who didn't allow that. I don't really know where she goes from here or what she does. I imagine that the way that people were responding to this made it a lot harder for her to process and move on from this. Which I guess is another reason why if you want your favorite predator to get away with it, you shouldn't harass their victims. I would have forgotten about Drake Bell's victims much sooner by now if I hadn't immediately seen a bunch of people trying to act like they were involved in some grand conspiracy against him. All of his fans started calling them liars and obsessed fans, and I got defensive of them and looked further into it. And I know for a fact that that's the case for a lot of my friends who also have felt very motivated by the way those victims are being treated to make sure that people don't forget who or what Drake Bell is, which, by the way, is a convicted child endangerer. Actually, and shout out to the Melanie Martinez Wikia, because I had no idea about this. The whole crypto/NFT thing is another thing that she and Drake Bell have in common too, other than just the fans who get praised and rewarded with attention for running with conspiracy theories to try to make them look better. Here's what the wiki says, and sorry, I just love how some of this is phrased, so I did not abridge this part.
In January of 2022, Melanie released an NFT, non-fungible token, collection via Maker's Place. This caused people to be disappointed, as Melanie has always been against these types of topics, causing them to think she was standing against what she preached. Even though Melanie had made a statement that she did not mean to offend anyone by using NFTs, multiple people still disagreed with the action, and some users pointed out that the platform uses Ethereum, and any form of Ethereum blockchain was still harmful to the planet regardless of its modifications. On January 22nd, 2022, Melanie addressed this issue through her Instagram stories. Hi cuties! Just want to be transparent about my NFTs coming out this week and give you all the info you need. Read through. These little creatures have been a huge inspiration for my art for years now. They hold deep sentimental value for me, and I know a lot of you collect them as well. I wanted to bring them to life in the digital world for you all to enjoy. Pink heart emoji, teddy bear emoji. Digital ownership during this day and age of social media is something I care about, given I have had the highest amount of hacked/leaked music and art on my label. I've witnessed people illegally profit off of my hard work time and time again, and creating digital art as an NFT offers protection of this art that I find to be valuable. I, as well as many of you, have concerns about NFTs regarding their impact on the environment. This is why I made sure to partner with a company that works with Ariel, which is a sustainability platform that calculates the carbon emissions based on associated energy use. The carbon offsets of my NFTs are allocated to high-quality forest conservation projects registered by American Carbon Industry. I want to clarify that I would not be doing these NFTs without this partnership with Ariel. Royalties from streaming and digital consumption of music are so low and not how most artists in music make money. We primarily generate income from touring, and as you guys know, I haven't been able to tour because of COVID. We are forced to find other avenues to make a living and fund our art. I'm always putting the money I make back into my art to be able to share it with you guys. Creating is an inherently spiritual practice, but it is no question that we are living in a material world. As an artist, I desire both spiritual and material balance in my life, which would mean being able to create art and music that I'm deeply connected to, as well as support myself. As far as accessibility, you don't have to have crypto to be involved in my project. You can pay with credit card if you want to. The cost of stills are $222. When buying a still, you are automatically entering a chance to win an animation of that still that would solely belong to you. You can sell it if you wish and generate money off of it for yourself. It is your choice to participate or not, and regardless of your choice, I respect you and love you guys so much. Just wanted to give you more background info. Pink heart emoji.
I don't know a ton about NFTs and crypto and stuff. I do know enough to know it's really bad for the planet, and also, even outside of that, it's shitty to try to charge your fans hundreds of dollars for a still fucking JPEG. Cut me a fucking break, Melanie. Just sell merch. Sell posters, t-shirts, open a Patreon or something. What are you doing? This is not the only way to make money post-COVID. You're ripping off your fans. That's what I have for now. I had already been thinking about looking into this for a video when I was seeing Melanie's new visuals on Twitter, and a couple of people were bringing this up there. And then a few of you now, again, like I said in the intro, in the Nuance Corner here, asked me to cover it. Big thank you to all of the lovely Nuance Corner friends who thought of me with this story. I make no promises on timelines or how quickly I can get things done or if I can do them at all, but I do really enjoy hearing about things that you would like to hear about from me. I welcome that in the comment section of my videos, my community posts. Maybe think about subscribing if you want to catch more videos like this from me in the future. I try to upload every week. If you want more videos from me, you can support me on my Patreon, where I upload extra videos every month. If you're looking for a one-off way to support me, I also have Ko-fi. I have a GoFundMe where you can donate to help me keep my housing. Thank you so much to everybody who already has, who's supported me through my Patreon, through the GoFundMe, through Ko-fi, through watching, liking, sharing my videos. I love making videos. There's almost 4,000 of us, and that is crazy and amazing, and I'm so happy. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you liked Melanie, if you still like Melanie, if you also always thought Melanie was a little bit too cringe to listen to. Let me know if it was unfair of me to always get her confused with Marina and the Diamonds, because I've definitely always just kept them in the same pocket in my head together. Don't harass people, even if you don't believe that this is the kind of thing that would make you stop listening to somebody. I know people have different lines, different boundaries. This genuinely might not matter to you, and if it doesn't, that's fine, but like, don't go harass Timothy. And yet I also don't think anybody watching this has been or will be doing that, so like, I don't really know what else to say here. It's just another really shitty example of what happens after somebody fulfills what they keep being told they have to do if they want to prevent other people from going through something similar. I love you. Thanks for watching.